Tonight, another day of defiance in Iran as hundreds take to the streets in protests. But the government vows to stop them and does. I'm Katie Couric. Also tonight, a new icon of the Iranian opposition. Images of a woman named Neda, a martyr for the cause, spread round the world. Patients left in the dark, doctors all too often failing to tell them when their medical tests come back abnormal. And a portrait of the artist who's painting the town and the country as well.
I really like this picture.
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Good evening, everyone. Iran's leaders promised to crush any new protest rallies, and today they did. Riot police armed with clubs and tear gas overwhelmed marchers in the capital. Still, opposition leader Mir Hossein Mousavi, who insists he won the presidential election, is calling for yet another peaceful demonstration on Thursday. Iran's government says at least 17 protesters have died since the disputed election, and for the first time, Iran's Electoral Council is admitting there were some voting irregularities, but says there were not enough to change the outcome. Meanwhile, the White House says President Obama was moved by the protesters and still has questions about the election. The latest now from Elizabeth Palmer in Tehran.
About 1,000 young people tried to rally in central Tehran today. But as in the past few days, huge numbers of police and paramilitaries wouldn't let them march. A notice on the Revolutionary Guard's website warned demonstrators would face revolutionary confrontation. But Iran's leadership seems anxious to avoid more of the kind of violence that killed at least 10 people on Saturday in clashes with security forces.
They use some machines that throw the water in people, and then they attack us with buttons.
They're worried that scenes like this will prompt further public criticism of government heavy-handedness from Iran's senior clergy. The regime knows very well how powerful mobile phone video has become, like the image of 27-year-old Neda, shot dead in the Tehran protests, and now a worldwide cyber icon of the opposition. As a sign of the colossal power struggle going on at the top of Iran's regime, a previously untouchable figure, the daughter of Grand Ayatollah Hashemi Rafsanjani, was arrested briefly over the weekend. Rafsanjani is the most powerful backer of the opposition candidate Mir Hossein Mousavi and is in increasingly open conflict with the supreme leader himself. At the root of the trouble is Iran's disputed election. But as soon as President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad's landslide victory was announced, the opposition accused the government of fraud. Since then, the defeated candidates have been searching for proof, and so have political scientists in Scotland, whose number crunching reveals that more people voted in some areas than there were voters, and President Ahmadinejad won by a huge margin in areas that had in the past been against him.
The numbers say that Ahmadinejad was sort of universally supported across the board, which really flies in the face of former trends.
Mir Hossein Mousavi, the defeated candidate and champion of the opposition, hasn't changed his call for new elections. But he hasn't been seen since last Thursday. Because many of his organizers have gone to ground fearing arrest, this massive protest movement is in danger of fizzling out, though the anger of millions of disenchanted Iranians will smolder on. Elizabeth Palmer, CBS News, Tehran.
As Elizabeth reported, the haunting image of a young woman dying in the street has now been seen all over the world. Richard Roth describes how Neda became the face of a new movement in Iran.
Posted to YouTube and other internet sites, the first shocking snippet of cell phone video ran less than a minute, with voices shouting, "Neda has been shot. Neda, don't be scared." Then, "Neda, stay alive." One account said she'd been with her father Saturday, a bystander half a mile from a large protest, when a single bullet from a sniper's rifle struck her in the heart. Video and still photos of the grim scene ricocheted through cyberspace. gathering a mix of rumor and detail. She worked part-time at a travel agency, it's claimed, and her age was 27. Her full name was Neda Aga Soltan, and just as quickly as her body was buried, her image spread as an icon on the internet. Then, with a few clicks on a website, someone converted one frame of that cell phone video into a copy of something familiar. An image of one woman turned into a symbol of Iran's anguish. Think of the man in the tank at Tiananmen Square for a picture that becomes an icon, or the teenaged girl at Kent State whose shock a nation shared. As photography director for National Geographic, David Griffin says an event becomes real through pictures when the pictures become personal.
You can watch it and observe it, but it's hard to make that hard connection to it. The moment it becomes individual, I mean, the one thing about that one image where the eyes are looking at you, I think that really connects to people.
Neda in the Farsi language means the call or the voice. Hers is echoing loud tonight, all around the world. Richard Roth, CBS News, London.
If Iran's leaders had their way, few people would have heard of Neda or even seen last week's massive protests. They've tried everything to censor coverage, from banning reporters to shutting down websites. But as John Blackstone reports, the news is still getting out, thanks in part to computer wizards half a world away.
Miami, Oklahoma may be a small town far from anywhere. But for protesters in Iran marching again today in spite of the increasingly tough government crackdown, this Oklahoma town has been a gateway to the rest of the world by way of Anthony Papillon's computer.
One of the things I always like to think that I'm a techie with an activist heart.
Papillon turned his computer into what's called a proxy server.
Basically, a proxy server is a go-between between one computer and another.
It's how one American and his computer can help Iranians get around government censors.
It's a crazy situation, unimaginable here in the United States.
The censors in Iran have blocked access to popular websites like Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. But by rerouting internet traffic to sites unknown to the censors, proxy servers let Iranians hide their real online destination.
As long as you can connect to the internet, you can have a voice and you can make a huge difference on a global scale.
Iranians are using services like Twitter to talk to the world and to each other. On Twitter today, there are calls to gather. Freedom-loving Iranians needed in Haftir Square, says one message. Another, go help your freedom fighters, brave souls of Iran. The video from Iran is reminiscent of demonstrations in China's Tiananmen Square 20 years ago. Back then, one of those demonstrators was Xiu Zhou. Now, he's a computer scientist in the U.S., working to keep the internet open for Iranians.
We do want to help people in the closed societies, and we understand their pain, so we want to help them.
Zhou is among a group of Chinese exiles, computer engineers who created Freegate, software designed to help people in China dodge internet censorship. But now, Freegate is being used by some 400,000 people a day in Iran to beat government censors.
The Iranian traffic to our platform exceeded the Chinese traffic.
Anthony Papillon's proxy server now appears to have been blocked by Iran's government, but he knows others are taking his place.
I think the world is showing them that, through technology, everyone's equal.
As the government of Iran finds and blocks proxy servers, it's become an online game of cat and mouse in which the mouse has become a powerful weapon. John Blackstone, CBS News, San Francisco.
Now to some late-breaking news from Washington, D.C. A deadly collision involving two metro trains during the evening rush hour. Nancy Cordes is following developments. Nancy, what's the latest there?
Katie, the situation is still unfolding, but authorities with Metro, the local transit system, confirm at least 2 people are dead, as many as 65 others injured, some of them critically. The force of the collision lifted the first 2 cars of one train up onto the other. Calling it a, quote, mass casualty event, local and federal authorities have swarmed to the scene. But because it is inaccessible by car, rescue crews have had to saw through fencing and carry the most seriously wounded out by foot. A tedious and time-consuming process. Passengers with minor injuries limped away or sat stunned on the ground nearby.
Again, we don't know the cause right now. We're focusing on making sure that the people receive any attention that they might need.
The crash happened just before 5 p.m. Eastern Time between two metro stops at the start of rush hour on one of the busiest metro lines here in Washington, the Red Line. All we know right now about the cause of this crash is that the two trains were on the same track and apparently were headed in the same direction, which will lead to questions, Katie, about signal problems or possibly driver error.
And Nancy, what is the safety record for the Metro in Washington?
Well, it's a fairly safe system. It's been around since the 1970s. In that time, there have been 2 serious derailments and 2 collisions. I happened to be there for the last collision about 2 years ago. It looked just as dramatic, but caused far fewer injuries.
All right, Nancy Cordes. Nancy, thanks very much. Also in Washington, President Obama signed landmark legislation today saying it will save lives. It's a tough new anti-smoking law that, among other things, gives the FDA the power to reduce the nicotine content of cigarettes and bans the fruit flavorings like strawberry and grape that make tobacco products so appealing to first-time smokers. The president said that as someone who started smoking as a teenager, he knows how hard it is to quit. Meanwhile, the president's push for other landmark legislation, healthcare reform, is sure to come up tomorrow as he holds a White House news conference. CBS News will bring it to you live at 12:30 Eastern Time. And what a finish at the U.S. Open today. The final round was pushed back a day because of all the rain on Long Island. For a while, it looked as if Phil Mickelson might bring home the trophy for his wife, Amy, who's currently battling breast cancer. He was tied for the lead with 4 holes left. But in the end, 29-year-old Lucas Glover outlasted the field for his first major win. Mickelson had to settle for a 3-way tie for second place. Tiger Woods, meanwhile, finished tied for 6th. Coming up next here on the CBS Evening News, a shocking new study. Why are so many patients not told when their medical tests are abnormal? Now an update on the Craigslist murder case in Boston today. 23-year-old Philip Markoff pleaded not guilty to murdering a massage therapist in a hotel room. But prosecutors said they have the 9mm handgun that was used and that they found it in a hollowed-out textbook in the defendant's apartment. Markoff, a medical student, allegedly met his victim through the Craigslist website. Turning to health news now, no one wants to hear bad news from their doctor, but a report out today says keeping patients in the dark about abnormal test results is happening with much more frequency. Here's our medical correspondent, Dr. John LaPook.
When 46-year-old David Tate didn't hear from the doctor about his routine lab tests, he figured no news is good news. He figured wrong.
I had no idea that there was a problem with my kidney at all.
But Tate's blood work indicated serious kidney disease. He wasn't told about it for 2 years and ended up on dialysis.
I'm devastated. I was crushed.
A review of over 5,000 patients found primary care doctors mistakenly failed to tell them of abnormal results an average of 7% of the time. And in one large practice, 26%.
I think it's a serious problem. It takes a lot of time and effort to track these results and notify patients.
Among results not reported to patients, high cholesterol, anemia, and abnormal pap smear. The worst offenders were offices without clear rules for following up on tests.
Those are abnormal results here and here.
Surprisingly, the study found practices with computer records did no better than those relying on paper. Organization was more important than computerization.
If you computerize a bad system, you just do worse faster. And what we need to do is have better systems, first of all, and then computerize them so that we can deliver that care to more people.
John, this is really disturbing. What can patients do to ensure this doesn't happen to them?
Well, Katie, for one thing, definitely don't assume that no news is good news. Okay, make a list, keep track. But I'm intrigued by this new trend towards giving patients online access to their medical records. You see projects for Microsoft and for Google, and I think really that's the future, with doctors and patients sharing the responsibility for managing the patient's information, a true partnership.
All right. Dr. John LaPook. John, thank you so much. In other news tonight, a plea deal in a high-profile criminal case. Singer Chris Brown pleaded guilty today to felony assault for for attacking his ex-girlfriend, the pop star Rihanna. Brown is expected to receive community service but no jail time when he's sentenced in August. And he's been ordered to stay away from Rihanna. Coming up next, states under stress. The recession has demand for welfare on the rise. The ongoing recession is hitting a lot of states and, of course, the people who live in them very hard. In fact, a report out today says more than half the states have seen the demand for welfare rise since last year. Cynthia Bowers now on Americans suddenly finding themselves with little choice but to ask the government for help.
Yes, precious. A few months ago, 25-year-old Takara Groves became a new mom, but she never dreamed she would have to resort to welfare to take care of little Trinity.
I don't think any one of the girls is going to say, I want to be on public assistance.
But unable to find work after being laid off from her job as a baggage handler at O'Hare, she found herself in line at the welfare office.
You walk in and there's so many people in there, and just the wait.
Lots of new people because for the first time in 15 years, welfare numbers are up in at least 26 states. In Illinois, it's 3%, but in South Carolina, that number is 23%, Florida 14%, and California 10%.
The demand for social services is increasing at a time when states just don't have the money to meet the need. Around the country, state revenues are fallen by more than 6%, and that could add up to more than $180 billion in shortfalls over the next 3 years.
We've been keeping statistics for over 30 years, and this is by far the worst situation that we've ever seen.
Illinois' governor is rallying the troops trying to push through a 50% income tax hike to close his state's $12 billion budget gap. In the meantime, the state is cutting back on subsidizing funerals for the poor. In California, where the deficit is $24 billion, tens of thousands of jobs are being cut. New Hampshire, $30 million in the hole, wants to sell 27 state parks. And in Hawaii, state workers are being forced to take 3 days a month off without pay. Not having money is a problem Takara understands, but one she doesn't expect government to solve.
Thank God that we do have a system that we can go to if we need help, but I want to get off of it as soon as possible.
But how soon that will be depends on when jobs become available again, and Takara can build a future based on work, not welfare. Cynthia Bowers, CBS News, Chicago.
Meanwhile, in Washington, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton returned to work today, but her traveling days are over for a while until her broken elbow mends. Clinton is skipping an upcoming foreign ministers meeting in Italy, sending an undersecretary in her place. In other news, a strong earthquake hit Anchorage, Alaska today. It was a magnitude 5.4, and it sent frightened residents diving for cover. But no injuries or major damage is reported. And now some developing news about film, a brand immortalized by Paul Simon. Well, sorry, Paul. Today, Eastman Kodak said it is taking your Kodachrome away. The legendary color film had a 74-year run, but new technologies, especially digital, have brought an end to those Kodak moments. Coming up next, the Johnny Appleseed of the art world, planting his paintings all over America. You may remember when Lady Bird Johnson set out to beautify America. Colorful flowers were her medium. But we end tonight with a man who has a similar goal on a somewhat smaller scale. Michelle Miller reports he's using a broad brush to spread happiness and hope.
I like this.
From Alaska to Las Vegas to a New York City street, artist Bryn Bataclan leaves his paintings in unexpected places.
I read the note and it said, take it and it's free.
It's finders keepers for anyone who discovers the artwork, which comes with a note promising that everything will be all right.
And I think definitely Wall Street does need this.
The note used to ask people to smile at strangers, but when the recession hit, the message changed.
So you hope to turn the entire economy around?
Yeah, why not? Yes, because of me, yeah. Big goal, but sure.
Bataclan is spreading hope one painting at a time. So you think it's the right message?
Yes.
But I thought it was a really nice message, and
a very nice painting.
Bataclan's been leaving street art for 6 years. Big paintings when he's flush, smaller ones when his budget is stretched.
I love this picture. It makes me smile.
He's dropped off his paintings in some 32 countries and about half the states. And they're proudly displayed somewhere.
Planning on putting this in my baby's bedroom.
For my bathroom or something.
Bataclan can even take his first name, Bryn, and turn it into a work of art. But he still has to deal with rejection. More often, though, it's a wholehearted endorsement.
I really like this picture.
He doesn't give everything away. A full-time artist, prices for his work range from $95 to $3,000. But he finds his joy in scenes like this. A manager who just wanted to cheer up a coworker.
Does this make you feel better?
Yes, much better.
Proving it doesn't take much to pay forward a little cheer. And that makes Bryn's art truly priceless.
Thank you, Brad.
Michelle Miller, CBS News, New York.
And that is the CBS Evening News for tonight. I'm Katie Couric. Thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.